Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings. I don't know how many people will have actually heard of this book. It was out of print when I finally got my copy. The thing is, this particular series, and it is a series, and I will be doing all 4 books in the series. There is a 5th book, if I'm not mistaken, but I never actually found a copy, so I haven't actually read it. This is a fantasy series with an absolutely bit of terrible cover art there. Because, just look at that. On the other hand, at least the person who did the cover art appears to have possibly read some of this book or been told something about this book. So, there's something. So, this is that trope, that sort of classic story of that girl who dresses up as a boy in order to do boy things because she is restricted by her sex from doing stuff. It's a trope, but and there's a lot in this book that's kind of, we've all seen it before, but it's very nicely done, and I like this a lot. So what's this about? This is in a universe where magic is real, but something like 100, 200, a very long time ago, probably centuries, what happened was that there are these various nomads that live in these plains, the so-called Ramtharran Plains. And these nomadic peoples, they're some of the only people around there who apparently can actually use magic. That it's really relatively rare that people can use magic. These are some of the few people who have people, the clans, they call themselves, that they actually produce people who can do magic. The thing is that 100 or 200 or however many 100 years ago, they rose up against the magic wielders and burned their city of Moituro to the ground and declared magic anathema and evil, etc., etc. The thing is that, as it becomes clear over the course of the series, it was that old saw of power corrupts, that basically you had a bunch of these people who, they started out just being people who could do magic, and eventually they built their fancy city and started sneering down their noses at the ignorant peons who couldn't do magic. And those ignorant peons who couldn't do magic took exception to being treated that way, took exception to showing up at the magic wielder city and saying, "Could you come please help us?" And the people in the city would say, "Psh, we're not going to help you." "Well, sure we could, but we don't feel like it." This wasn't even a matter of, we shouldn't be solving your problems for you. It was, everybody in our camp is dying of a horrible fever. Could you send a healer? And them saying, "Well, I don't feel like sending a healer." Anyway, so it turned into a whole big thing. And now, centuries later, all of the various people have been raised to believe that magic is evil. And so this story starts with our heroine, Gabria, and her entire clan, not just immediate family, but the 25 families that make up the Corin clan, have been viciously murdered by somebody who clearly used magic to allow themselves to sneak in close enough. And so she sets out on a quest to get vengeance. She knows who did it because because Lord Medb, which if you were to use the Gaelic pronunciation would be Maeve, which is weird because that's a woman's name, so I'm not entirely certain how to pronounce that. Anyways, so she has to go and she decides she has to go and get revenge on him, to to claim recompense for the fact that everybody in the entire clan, not just her family, but the whole clan, has been viciously murdered. She has to do that, but in order to do that, she has to pretend to be a boy, because a woman can't claim that. More than that, because we're dealing with one of those inherently sexist universes, a woman will not, if a woman has become clanless through, whether through her own fault or no fault of her own, another clan can choose to take her on, but their odds are they're only going to take her on if she's particularly beautiful or skilled at womanly stuff. And Gabria is kind of a hoyden who's been taught how to use a sword by her brothers. And she wants revenge, not just to be taken in. So she sets out to take revenge. And along the way, she befriends a talking horse, because there are telepathic talking horses. Dark horse. Title. Important. And her telepathic talking horse, Nara, helps her get there, and, and so she finds her way to another clan, the Kahulanin, and because her mother was originally a Kahulanin, so it's worth her, trying them for family bonds, and she pretends that she's actually her twin brother, Gabrin. And over the course of this book, you have the usual close calls, near discoveries. What's more interesting in this book is her going through the realization that she is one of the evil magic wielders, followed by the realization that she doesn't think she's evil, therefore having magic doesn't automatically make you evil. And eventually goes to a sorceress who's hiding out in a bog, the Woman of the Marsh, and manages to get trained, at least enough to defeat Lord Medb, who is, has decided to become an evil sorcerer and take over the clans and run the Ramtharran Plains, and, the usual evil overlordship stuff that happens when you get maniacal evil sorcerers. The thing about this is, it's not the greatest book ever, but it's a good, solid read. You have a young woman who is learning swordplay, and also, of course, the very amusing bit where she suddenly realizes that you can't just waltz into the role of the opposite sex and just expect to totally, get along. You don't need to know all of the ins and outs. It'll be totally easy. And it isn't until she's actually doing it that she realizes how many things she doesn't know about being a boy, and realizes that, there are things that women can say in their culture in terms of blessings of their mother goddess Amara that men are not allowed. Like, it's sort of, men shouldn't bring up the mother goddess. One of the few equalizing things in this book that I always did like is that this is a fundamentally sexist fantasy novel series. Women have their place, and their role is cooking and cleaning in the tents, and women aren't allowed to pick up swords, and it's death on a woman who pretends to be a man and do man stuff, and so on and so forth. It's all, very typical. But one of the few differences is that in this book, in this universe, among the clans, it has been decided that where men are the physical strength, women are the spiritual strength, that women have been given a weaker physical form because they are where all of the spiritual power rests. And it's an interesting thought that, and, putting aside any debates about whether or not women are genuinely physically weaker than men and that sort of thing, it's a very interesting idea conceptually, because, of course, if you're going with the idea of, that fundamental male-female dichotomy, it's a very, very equalizing force, I think, in a lot of ways, to say, sure, that the men are the hunters and the warriors and the whatnot, but let's say that women are the ones who hold the spiritual power, that women are the ones who spiritually make or break a society. And it's a small nod. It's a small nod because, of course, temporal power does tend to always win out over spiritual power when you're talking in day-to-day life, but it's a nice touch to say that there's a very specific female sphere, and that gives women a very specific female power that goes beyond just, well, the woman runs the household and so people need to listen to her because that's, women household stuff. At the end of this, there is a bit of a token romance. I mean, if you're paying attention to the book, it's not like a romance where you look at it and you find yourself asking, well, where did that come from? How did they even come to that conclusion? Because, of course, Gabria is training with the Kahulanin for several months. She is semi-adopted into their clan. And she is officially seconded, officially apprenticed to Athlone, who is the sort of the man in charge of all of the warriors, but also is the heir apparent to the chief of that particular clan. So when she's apprenticed to him, that means that they spend large amounts of time together. And when he eventually finds out that she is a woman trying to take revenge on the evil sorcerer who murdered her family, he sets out teaching her proper sword dueling techniques and things. And it means that they do implicitly spend large amounts of time together. It means that they do implicitly get to know each other. And so when at the end of this book, they kind of just have this moment of, oh yes, we're totally in love now. Boom. In some ways, it feels a little bit artificial, but at the same time, it in the background, you can see how, where, and when that relationship could have built. That said, the relationship is almost not the point in this book, and it's kind of there. It's kind of just there. Now, it picks up in the second book in the series where the relationship actually becomes a point of the book rather than, like, the romantic relationship rather becomes one of the actual plot points in the book rather than something that just kind of appeared at the end. I find myself thinking that Ms. Herbert may have been looking forward to her sequel when she wrote this, but it could equally, because this is officially the first book, her first novel, this could equally just be the fact of a brand new author who hasn't quite realized that how to write romance. Anyways, so there's some prophecy in this, and there's some drama, and there's excitement, and there's revenge, and magic, and transformation, and, and nomadic peoples hiding out in a fortress, and, all kinds of stuff. And it's a nice bit of world building. It's an interesting world that in some ways I'm sorry we don't get to see more of, because, even over the course of the next 3 books following this, we never leave the Ramtharran Plains, which is a pity because I would have been interested to see more of it. Well, okay, we go to the city of Pradesh, but that's like half of one book and then never again. In any event, I will be moving on to the sequel in this series next week, and I will see you all, well, next week.